This is new close-up, deep action. We created it to give the world 3 times fresher breath and eliminate up to 99% of germs. Maybe we went too far. There's an outbreak of freshness. So celebrate, turn up the volume, jubilate. We really love. Now the best ever from close-up, 3 times fresher.
Hello, a very good morning to you and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis show, and on Newsfile we put Ghana first. And I am your host, Samson Ladi Ayenini. The remembrance of the death of an admittedly peaceful, upright and a consummate religious man provokes ugly and vain debates about where a nation should get a tin of azar paint and dip a brush in to spell his name on a wall or street not made of gold. Well, the controversial brother who provoked this met his match. He was undone in media communications by an over 90-year-old quiet sister. Shall we focus on this at the expense of President Mills's legacy and a debate about how much privacy to grant our presidents on issues touching on their health? How is the country preparing for the supreme judgment? The projections of possible outcome and peace calls, good or how dangerous? Jida Roth's investigative report. How is the presidency enjoying the controversy caused by the delay to release the report and announce implementation of the pledged radical reforms plus prosecution of the indicted or interdicted individuals? This is the show that is dedicated to the memory of the peace-loving late President John Atta Mills. Choose his kind of language for your messages to 1422 or Facebook wall and to newsfile at myjoyonline.com. We will be right back.
It's a very heavy heart that we sing praises to the late John Evans Fifi Atta Mills today. We are singing the praises of our late president today because we believe that he is still alive and awake in the Lord.
My daughter, Abba Walters, rang me and told me, Daddy, we have seen on the TV, we have heard on the TV that your cousin is dead. Then I said, how? When? And then, where I was, I tuned into the TV of the pastor I had visited, and I heard it live. It was really shocking. So I rang home at Otwam and asked the family members, have they heard it? Said they had also heard it. It was really shocking and unexpected.
Francis, and together we build Ghana to make it better, just like Prof always wanted for the generation just yet unborn. And that thinking that we are all peaceful people, just like Christ said, that he leaves us with peace, in peace. Prof has left us in peace, so we should be peaceful and love one another.
It is important to know that he, Atta Mills, the former president, was the president of this country, and that he was not for Otwam alone or Kofi alone. He became a national figure. Therefore, I'm not supportive of the idea that people think that, what have you done for this community? What have you done for this community? I'm sorry to say this. That means a selfish mentality.
The good Lord will never forgive us, Ghanaians. I'm betting you. What we did to contribute to his demise, the Lord will never forgive us. In fact, I could remember when he was he had the chance of winning the election. The moment he won the election, this language came out. Odiya no wuye. Odiya no wuye. The president really died. Ghanaians should be very careful. Otherwise, if the good Lord starts cursing us, we will never become what we should be.
They always say, Atamis Amambo Bonnie, and this Amambo Bonnie, Atamis Amambo Bonnie. I know that he didn't say anything. That's why I love the man. He's always a peace. He loves everybody. Ghana, they give the mic to us, but we didn't respect him. So God will take him away.
Somebody who spoke to me only yesterday, and I think that the skies are so clear with a message that even the heavens express the solemnity, the profound calmness and sobriety of the character of Professor Moss.
I recollect vividly, as if it were only just yesterday, the emotional breakdown that I suffered upon hearing the news. Our nation, Africa, and indeed the entire world was thrown into a state of mourning and grief. A grief that was so intense that it shook the very foundation of our land. It cast a dark cloud over our country and set the hearts of all Ghanaians bleeding with shock and sorrow. I implore all Ghanaians, especially the youth, that we should continue to be inspired by this great man and resolve to be instruments of positive social change in our country. In everything we do, let us ask ourselves what the impact of our actions or inactions will be on our nation and our fellow citizens. In doing so, we shall be doing honor to the memory of our departed president, Professor John Evans Atta Mills. On the occasion of the first anniversary of his death, I stand before you, my fellow Ghanaians, to rededicate ourselves to the many things that the late Professor John Evans Atta Mills stood for. Peace, social justice, building a country of a united people devoid of deep-seated partisan interest, being a father for all, and developing Ghana into a country of equal opportunities without regard to partisan, tribal, religious, or any other considerations.
We believe in the fact that legislations themselves don't fight corruption. It's only when they are enforced. This is an opportunity for the president and for government to actually say that we are still committed to the fight against corruption. And anybody who is found guilty, so far as this Jida saga is concerned, will not be spared. If they are punished and everybody sees the outcome of, the end result of a corrupt person, it serves as a deterrent to other people in the public institutions. If you want to get good results from this radical restructuring that the president mentioned yesterday, and we are hoping he will back his words with action, then the right kind of people should be engaged. Certainly, we should not be engaging politicians to be doing restructuring agenda. There are consultants in this country, we don't have to go far. People who are called HR consultants can help us in restructuring JIDA, because change is difficult.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. We're coming to you live from the Multi-TV studios. This is your Joy News channel, and you're also listening to us on Joy 99.7 FM and over a dozen affiliate stations across the country. We wish to sincerely apologize that you're unable to get us online at Multi-TV World/streams. Technicians are working at that. We hope that they will be able to fix it so you can join us through the stream. But if you're not, you can hope to catch us again when we repost it on myjoyonline.com. Or as always, this show is repeated at 9:30 p.m. So you can always watch it. Thank you very much. And the show is watched and listened to by millions of discerning people all over. And we want you to send your messages to newsfile@myjoyonline.com. You can also use the text network. You can send to 1422 or post your comments on our Facebook wall. Thank you very much. But make sure that whatever you post is on the issues and you're using very civil language. The show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of MTN. Everywhere you go, Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and as close as a partner. And Lipton, enjoy a cup of the healthy Lipton, which is inspiration flowing from nature. Thank you very much. Two of my guests already seated in the studios. We're waiting for the rest to join us, but until then, we start the discussion. Now, I have in the studio Abdul Malik Kwekubako Jr. He is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Good morning, senior, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, my brother.
All right. Nana Ato-Dadzie. He's a former chief of staff and a legal practitioner. He's with the National Democratic Congress legal team, currently defending the petition. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. We'll soon be joined by Ni Ayikwe Otu. He's a former Attorney General and Minister for Justice in the NPP administration, and Godwin Adawune, who is a law lecturer and practitioner. Okay, so as you know, the issue on the table today, we are dedicating the show to the memory of the late President John Evans Atta Mills. And as you know, the first anniversary is going on even today in Cape Coast, where there's going to be the laying of the foundation stone for a library in his honor. The President, John Dramani Mahama, will be doing that on behalf of the nation. Gentlemen, that's going to be our first issue that we discuss. After that, we'll look at the Supreme petition and preparations ahead of the Supreme judgment. There are calls that the calls for peace may backfire. And there are also people who are projecting various angles supposing to be what people should expect. Some say that is bad. Some say it's all right. Let's allow it in a democracy. We'll look at the Jida-Rott investigative report, why the delay still in releasing same, and if the ongoing discussion is healthy for the situation. There's also the alleged arsonist, who have been granted bail eventually. Now, I'll start with you, Nana Ato-Dadzie, and you are sort of officially, roped. Yes, the first anniversary cloth. What goes through your mind when you come to think about the nation taking a break and seeking to remember Professor Mills?
Well, thank you very much. Anytime you come to think about the fact that Professor Mills, for me, that's where he is. Professor Mills is no more. Raises a lot of challenge. A lot of challenges for me because I've known him, in so many years. Him as a young lecturer. Then I was a student with the same sports group, even though he was a leader. We went outside the country with sports, you know, the team of people, Akutampao, all of us, you know, to Nigeria to play games. And so we had a wonderful personal interaction. I mean, he was a very strong man, very strong, but very healthy gentleman who played sports, cricket, hockey, soccer, table tennis. He was in every sport. And to imagine that suddenly he's no more as a result of some illness, you know, it only tells you the finiteness of man, the fact that there comes a time when we all must go. You know, it's a gentle reminder of the reality of life, that you start life, you grow, but then a time comes when you must leave. But living at the peak of his career, it's what, you know, keeps people wondering. You know, I mean, I think that the shock of last year was that the president was dead. I mean, you see the president going to console others, but suddenly the president himself dead. And it's not a normal occurrence. That's so sad that one remembers that all these things would have done. For a man who was in the academia, a very solid academic, in the public service, he hit the highest level, you know, to become the vice president of the republic and the president of the republic. I worked between him and President Rawlings, you know, in the two sides, bubbling between the president and the vice president in the 4-year tenure. So I understand, I saw a bit of him, his politics, his sports, as I said, in the sports council, the hockey and all that. I think it was a great influence on our society. Definitely a great loss. You know, that's what I think.
We'll talk about his politics later, and we will talk also about the need for a national discussion onto how much of privacy should be allowed our presidents, especially in respect of questions touching on their health. Whether there should be a policy or a law strictly speaking about how those aspects of their lives ought to be conducted. And you will tell me shortly how you think he would wish to be remembered by Ghanaians. Abdul Malik, I don't know how you want to start, but how do you find the lineup of activities to commemorate his 1-year anniversary?
Well, I think it was what was to be expected. I mean, if you follow all the details of the events, there have been some few controversial things that have come up, and I'm sure you give us time to deal with them.
Exactly,
in their specific
we'll deal with
instance. So, being the first president who died in office, it had its own significance historically, and it was to be expected that the nation would mourn him. For me, the way and manner we all came together as a united people and mourned him last year, it was obvious that 1 year down the line, there'll be the same spirit driving the commemoration. And I think that's exactly what happened, you know. So in terms of the programming, not much controversy, as I said, except 1 or 2 points. So I really have nothing to say against the programming. I thought it was to be expected, being a president, to rise to the level of being president of a country is itself an achievement, especially when you are democratically elected. For me, that's important. It's a very important characteristic that we should always look at. So in that sense, it would have been a surprise, indeed it would have been shocking if there was no national celebration or commemoration of the 1 year demise. So I find it very normal. Yeah.
All right. And I have to introduce Godwin Adawuni for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us indeed. And Nia Iko too is also just about to take his seat. Now, Abdul Malik, you were talking about you would have been shocked if there was no national program to celebrate the first anniversary of his passing. But we understand that the anniversary committee, the planning committee, is using funds not from the state.
Well, I don't have the details. I have to be very careful in intruding into
they
that
have said so,
area.
So
yes, but
times.
I don't have the details to authenticate what they are saying. The use of public facilities in themselves is indicative of some state contribution. And they have applied some state facilities. And they have been able to attract some state institutions to, like the police and all the rest. I've been part and parcel of all this is expenditure on the part of the state. So that's why I'm not too sure in which areas are they not relying on the state as we speak. And I think I heard the spokesperson for the committee indicating that even after the program, when they have made up, they prepared their accounts, they could still fall on government to fill in the gap in certain areas. So that's it. And let me be very blunt with you. I would have been absolutely supportive of the state fully funding that project. But except I'll call for transparency and accountability. Okay? If we do it for Nkrumah, I don't see why we cannot do it for any other leader. Of course, we've had some omissions. There are some other leaders we haven't done well for. And that perhaps brings up the principle of equity and fairness. We could address all that. We don't address those issues of lack of equity and fairness by undermining the principle of moving forward. Right. So I am fully for, and I'm surprised that the state, is it fear of criticism? There are certain things that you ought to be very clear about. So I think that the state should have gone out of its way, developed a budget, prepared a budget for that, make it public, execute the operation, and submit accounts for auditing by the appropriate authorities. Nothing wrong with that in principle.
Yeah. God, on that score, we cannot call it, plainly so to speak, a national remembrance. Because it is not the state, as far as we know, it's not the state that is directly sponsoring the first anniversary of the former president. Let me first of all acknowledge Ni Ayikwe. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the show.
Morning.
All right.
Well, the national character of the celebration, to my mind, must not be assessed or interpreted narrowly in terms of the source of funding. Of course, the source of funding will be significant in terms of bringing the various activities into reality, but that is just an aspect. It will include mobilizing the whole society around the event. And this mobilization may even require individuals to make personal contributions. And that will not take away the national character of the celebration. To me, the national character of it takes the form of the whole nation together recognizing that this event is a national event. And how individuals and groups may contribute to it is another matter.
All right. Yeah. When you cast your mind back to the week of the events of his passing, what goes through your mind?
Well, I mean, like Mr. Abdul Malik has said, it's just the same as the celebration of his passing. So if you put it that way, but of course, it's not a live event as it was a year ago.
How did you get to hear the news of his death?
On radio.
On radio?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Aikoto.
Yes, sir.
Tell us, what or how would you want the former president to be remembered?
Well, he was elected the president of this country. Therefore, he became a president for everybody, not only for the NDC elements. But sometimes we get a feeling that some want to arrogate and take the celebration, whatever it is on his part, onto themselves alone. I don't know how national is this committee that has been put up to do the celebration. If it looks partisan, then again, one gets the impression that it's not an all-inclusive thing and they don't want it to be partisan, as Kweku said. The fans are something else. He thinks that they should just come up and tell us. But they say they are raising funds and all that. Traditionally, we always celebrate a 1 year. The point is whether it's going to become institutionalized, where on this particular day, people would be clamoring for some kind of celebration. Of course, it's always sad when somebody loses life, and especially in Anes, where he was working as a president of the state, and then all of a sudden he dies. That is traumatic, and it helps. I have seen many funerals well attended, especially when the person passes on suddenly. So everybody wonders, oh, what happened to him? And as lawyers, I can assure you, we suffer that fate a lot. You see the man in court today, the next day say he's dead. Oh, and everybody rushes there. So the outpouring of grief and all that was because the impression created was that he was fine, he was well, he just come back from medical checkup and all that. And then all of a sudden, the man kicks the buckets.
How did the news come to you?
I had traveled to Ho to do a case. I was on my way. It was, getting to the elections, I think July. So we were eating up, and there's some people in my area who wanted me to buy some bobo drums for them. So I had stopped somewhere, arguing with the people about when Richard Sky came on his city, and then there he broke the news. And I heard on the way coming, Ateku. So what's the video of a coup, which means he's dead. And that was it all the way until I got to Accra, yes. So that's how I got
and that's the question I didn't ask you. How did you also get it? You are closer to government.
Yes, it was a very challenging day. It's a day I cannot easily forget for some other reason. I was with Mrs. Betty Molidrusu facing the Public Accounts Committee. It was the most challenging day, appearance with the committee. I would say a lot heated, a lot of give and take with the committee. And all of a sudden, somebody whispered something into my ears from behind me. I was too heated to be listening to him. Then after a few moments, I got a little note from the chairman of the committee, Honorable Kandapa, kind of asking, what do we do? And he realized that, my man wasn't there, so he walked over to the side and beckoned to me. I went to the aisle. He said, so how do we go on? I said, Uncle Atta is dead. I said, wait a minute, flip my phone, made a quick call, and it was difficult. But it was necessary because the cameras were all on.
All right.
10, 19 cameras were the proceedings. Right. So I said, look, can we just, let's go on for a while, and then we tail off. Because it would have been a terrible situation just to cut off and make an announcement when we didn't know the traditional arrangement that had been done. I didn't want to, but it was a personal gift. But the more difficult thing was to tell my client, Mrs. Betty Molidrusu, why an adjournment had to be taken. So after a while, the adjournment was taken. They went to the side room, and he was asking, "Nana, what's the problem? Why the early?" I said, "Well, the president is dead, and she simply collapsed into my hands, weeping, and all of us were trying to console her. It was a difficult day for us.
Really a difficult day, and I think for many people, even the remembrance also brings almost equal measure of the mood at the time. Now, Nana, I had asked the question earlier, from your closeness to him, how do you think that he would want to be remembered?
Yes, throughout the number of years that I've related, I think that this Professor Mills had been influenced strongly by his past, his training, the time, the ideological school that he had to pass through, his CPP background. He is very strongly patriotic, intensely patriotic. And really, we flew to Kumasi, the sports authorities at those days, when he wasn't even, appointed, he was with Sports Council, to watch and support the Black Stars and all that. And you can see him, he's a team player and believe that United will win. And for me, it was very clear that he was a person who wanted to see a united Ghana. He wanted to see a prosperous Ghana. No two ways about that. He wanted to see Ghana as a very stable country. And he wanted to see Ghanaians step out there as very confident. Those traits which the ideological school and CPPs in background in those days gave to him. And that's the kind of country he wanted to see. A united, prosperous, stable, confident Ghanaian, country, at peace with itself, loving each other. And really, for me, that's what I think he will feel good in his grave, waking up to see that that's the country he's left behind,
Abdul Malik, I asked that question, how Nana thought Professor Mills would like to be remembered, so that we'll introduce the aspect of how Okoe van der Poy thinks he wants to be remembered, by putting his name on the streets and on the hockey pitch or stadium.
Well, to be honest with you, it's difficult to provide an answer to the question you've asked, in the sense that how would he want to be remembered? Dead men don't talk. So how am I to know, except perhaps to look at his character when he was alive and make a deduction of a certain sort, which will still not be authoritative as such. It will be just me speculating. It's been captured with certain characteristics: the humility, modesty, perfect sense of humor. We scientists have that particular characteristic. So that's the kind of man. I'm not looking at his politics yet. I'm looking at the man. Very decent person. I considered him a senior friend, and for him, we're not co-equals, but for him to have had that kind of, room to accommodate man in the course of my work, if there were any publications he didn't like, he would call you. Even when it wasn't restricted to my own newspaper, he would call, and all sorts of things. So that's kind of person who was risen to the level of president and will still come down to interact with people like us, definitely was full of humanism. So yes, he would want us to do things for him in a very modest, humane way, without generating heat or controversy, which would more or less undermine the kind of qualities that he had when he was alive. So that's the way I would see him. But as to what we should do to him, I think it's the state's prerogative. And usually the state has modalities how to go about these things. We've done some for our former leaders, some. We have unfairly treated some of our former leaders. I'm here focusing on constitutional or democratically elected leaders. That's where my focus is. I don't consider the other breeds political leaders. No, I don't. It's a matter of principle. I'm not taking away the human factor. I feel sorry for any human being, whoever you were or are. But here we are dealing with strict politics. And in that case, it's for the state, the executive, parliament, and other appropriate institutions to sit and take a look at what we should do for our former president who died in office a year ago. But beyond that, the other presidents and prime ministers, at least we've had only one prime minister, I'm sorry. But you see, Nkrumah is an exception. I think we have done more than we can for Dr. Nkrumah. He's gone beyond Ghana. Even the AU has done what it should do for him. So it's difficult question, as I said, to answer from the perspective of him wanting what to be done for him. No, I'm not going to be able to give you an authoritative answer there.
All right.
But what the state should do, I think, you see, this multiplicity of awards also can lead us into the realm of absurdity. If every district authority or metropolitan or municipal authority were going to do something of that sort, you can imagine it would lose its value. So I was thinking that a very focused approach from a central point of view, in this case the state leading it, one huge monument built for him, is institutionalizing his memory through a certain approach. Even if it's one or two, it's fine. You know, but this approach of everybody getting involved to just honor him can backfire.
All right. I'll return and then briefly at a point when you are done with how you think he ought to be remembered, would see how to clear off the aspect of Mr. Van der Poel's thing very shortly.
Yeah, I avoided that because you hadn't invited me yet.
Oh, all right. All right. Ms. Okoe too. Do you subscribe to Kukubako's suggestion that we should look at this from a national policy perspective, so to speak, for want of a better description? So our legislature sits down, decides what ought to be done. At the executive level, cabinet level, there's a decision as to what ought to be done so that we don't continue with this piecemeal, local assemblies and individuals wanting to do one thing or the other for him.
Yeah, I think that ought to be the position. Looking at Atta Mills himself, from my own perspective, I would not describe him as a very regular politician until he was brought onto the NDC, party stage. He owes to me a lot to Jerry Rawlings because all the problems Jerry had with people in the Swedo declarations and things like that, he stood by him. Honestly, I was told somewhere that he even had to allow him to use his smoke for some his smoke. He had to use his smoke, to do some campaigning at some party event and all that. He was an academic generally, and I don't know whether in his own estimation, perhaps he thought of leading the country to the extent of leaving legacies and things behind. It happened. He went through elections on about 3 occasions before he finally succeeded. And I remember when I was secretary to the bar that in all his campaigns, he kept on talking about peace, peace, peace. We got offended and wrote a statement whether the country was at war. What is all this peace? Everywhere goes, Goli goes to preach peace. I remember issuing a statement that the country was not at war and should stop wasting our years with his peace message. So clearly, he was that kind of man, peaceful. So I don't think he has any. And then if you bring in the TB Joshua aspect, if it is true that at a point he actually wanted to resign, and all that, then to me, I see him as somebody who came and served and thought he had finished his work, the health was not good, and so he was prepared to just, let go. So if then, I am told, I don't know how true it is, that in those days when Okoe was in America, when Atta Mills visited, that was where he actually lodged. So they were very, very good friends, and perhaps that is why he thinks he owes it a personal duty towards him to do other things. And he brought him down to become the mayor of Accra and all that. But I agree with Kweku. I mean, he has served this country. He's entitled to a place in the history of this country, and therefore, cabinet can think about something. And it is not to be, if it is not to be partisan, then they bring it to Parliament and let the people discuss it and come out with something.
Nana, what do you say about that?
Well, I've been listening quietly because really, as a former chief of staff, I do know that the sentiments being expressed really reflect largely the situation in government, and government, a broader government. The state has a body normally known as the Honors and Awards Committee. It exists. It's a non-partisan establishment within, at times hooked to the State Protocol Department, but it is a unit by itself. And they have quite a number of seasoned persons who've seen it all, they know the history. I don't know how well resourced they are now, but there was Mr. Alute who could tell you all about medals and whatnot. In times of crisis, you can just fall on him. And these are people to build up. It's an institution that must be resourced and prepared properly to face such challenges. It shouldn't leave it, for me, we shouldn't leave it to the partisan, government, as it were, in power. Assuming that, Professor Mills had died not in office, but at a time when another party were in place. How are we going to handle it? You say, well, this is a man who fought against us. Forget it. You see, it rolls back to the challenges of Dr. Liman and all that. I mean,
we are learning, certainly, yes. We are learning from the established democracies, and they won't do any such thing that because he was not in our party, he doesn't deserve recognition.
Yes, but you must develop, you must learn. You must actually be practicing it, just not reading about them. You get me? And I would quickly want to say that without opening the honest nest, quickly just open a bit of it. I've sat back and had a lot of people talk about how Dr. Liman was abandoned, his funeral and all that. And at times I feel sad. I think it's because we don't write our history and all that. Because this was a head of state who died. I was there. I was in charge, We offered everything for the funeral. Everything. A helicopter to lift, first of all, to be buried in Accra, it was rejected. A helicopter to lift the body, after they decided they go and bury the body, have a burial in the hometown, it was rejected. The challenges of carting the body to his hometown eventually opened up, and later on, what should be done?
I think there was too much partisanship. When that debate comes up, a lot of the time, the focus is on what Fulera, the wife, should have, what care she should have received.
Well, again, it's an institutional thing. I really would love to say that these are because we don't follow through things. Sometime 1998, I'm sorry if I have to go back to history. Sometime 1998, government of the government at the time decided that they should stabilize the families, the widows particularly, of the heads of state who were dead. And I was a person who was charged after the cabinet had taken a decision, the president decided a certain lump sum after some calculation. Way back from 1957, from Fatah and Nkrumah right down to Mrs. Liman, each one of them had a lump sum payment, and they were to be placed on the appointment position of deputy minister, and then take all those benefits, you see, and the whole thing was to be developed. I don't know whether maybe it's been abandoned, but we said this is some. I went to each of them, the wives, and actually presented checks to them. And I will tell you about that, because you had to convene the mother to meet. I think Sekou collected that for the mother and all that. This is a free fight. So it is just because we fail to let our institutions work.
All right. Godwin, what should be the way?
Well, the way out is a united position.
Kweku is going through his archives, and I suspect he wants to make an input on the question of the Liman discussion.
There's some truth in it, but there's also a slight in it. Anyway, just proceed.
You finish.
But there's a lot of truth in what you
realize everybody agrees that the late president was not divisive, at least personally, and therefore would definitely not have wished that he should leave behind a Ghana that is disunited. Now, looking forward, and with the specific issue
you would have to speak up a bit more for me. Yeah.
With the specific issue with regard to what should be done with matters like this, Interestingly, you will see that all the actors in terms of the political activities today have predecessors. So you can talk about the J.B. Dankwa group, you can talk about the Liman group, you can talk about the Nkrumah group, you can, let's say, talk about the Mills group. Now, these organs, to me, can constitute the center around which discussions of these things should be done. I mean, you may disagree with me.
You don't think the best place to do that is in Parliament?
Well, you need a certain basis that will provide the background for Parliament to act. Don't forget, unless these grassroots, so to speak, have a common understanding on what these things should constitute and how they should be brought into being, the kind of Parliament that we have had since 1993 will not be able to come out with a position that will be acceptable. So it is part of the consensus building that...
It appears that on this issue in Parliament, they speak with one voice. And how, you know, in praising the late president and all of that.
Well, but that is, let's say, at the theoretical level. We are now talking about practicalizing those ideas so that they become national events. So that even if we disagree, we may only disagree on the peripheral issues of the means, but not the substance.
All right.
So I think that the various political traditions, which for a very long time to come will continue to produce leaders whose lives and activities will always provide us with the discussion issues to talk about, are the ones that we should start with. But I agree. I mean, those leaders who have been removed from power unconstitutionally deserve some national recognition. And I think that it will be very difficult if you look at just one person in terms of the late Professor Mills and then continue to celebrate, I mean, his death and life, while the others are not also being celebrated. I mean, certainly their followers may not feel very happy about it, and their commitment and participation in the process may not be as we would have wished. Yep. So I think that it is not a bad idea that we look at how to institutionalize this particular issue.
Thank you very much, Godwin. And Newsfile is brought to you in partnership with Lipton. Join Lipton Tea on the journey of refreshment and vitality. The world's favorite hot tea brand will give you the needed level of alertness to start your day. So take another look at your day and begin with a cup of Lipton for natural refreshment in mind and body. Lipton Tea, inspiration flowing from nature. Now, Abdul Malik, if we can now zero in and quickly deal with that aspect of Alfred van der Poel's portion. It appears he had good intentions, but the presidency disagrees with him. And the nation, in fact, appears to disagree with him in the manner he sought to go about it.
Yes, but a quick one. Mr. Daisy was right to a very large extent. I've seen the documentation to effect some of those things he was alluding to. But it wasn't as comprehensive as it ought to have been. And that's why we had a problem with Sekou Nkrumah organizing a demonstration in front of the residence of the late Justice Annan, if you recall, in the sense that that property which Achampong had built for Madam Fattah and the family had been hijacked, so to say, by the state and given to the Speaker of Parliament. So things didn't go well. It had to take the Kufuor administration to restore those properties, even though in writing, relative to the Madam Okoe's property, the NDC had indicated that had been handed over, but in practice it never happened. So there were problems with how we've handled the families of departed presidents and heads of states. Now to come to, and Liman, there was a rejection, as he indicated, of some of the support that the state wanted to offer, because their view was that for a long time, Liman had been neglected. We had left the man to hang around as if he was nobody, just because he had been unconstitutionally overthrown. There were times that we had to push his vehicle in the streets of Accra. I took part in one or two of such occasions when we had attended some political meetings. You know, his passport had been seized from him for a very long time. It was a tail end that some state support came in. So the family, there was a section of the family that thought this was unfair, that after showing a certain protracted insensitivity to the plight of a former head of state, suddenly that he had died, you love the corpse. That, you know, that thing. So it's there, and I brought all those publications here actually to show that this is what happened in the Liman case. But to come to the AMA boss's gaffe, you know, I think that I'll go substantive first. A certain lack of institutional memory, apart from the ineptitude and the sycophancy that clearly informed what the AMA did, that is the AMA did, there was a certain lack of institutional memory. And I say so because of an interview I heard the AMA boss grant to Kwame Sefakai. I was shocked. He did not have any idea of the role that Madam Okoe had played in the hockey history of this country.
He knew that she's the designer of the Ghana flag.
And according to him, even his own interactions with the members of the AMA and the Hockey Association did not bring that up, and that they were all in full support of what he was going to do. That is serious. Okay? Not just the person, Mr. Oko van der Poel, but the institution, Accra Metropolitan Authority. Not having that knowledge, for me, is serious enough. It's just not too good. It's difficult to accept that, but it was clear, because if he knew, he would not have embarrassed himself on air by indicating he didn't know. He clearly didn't know. So that ignorance is there. But unfortunately, you see, I'm unable to excuse him, because it appears that even in view of the law, the legislation that backs the district or metropolitan authorities in dealing with some of these things, they goofed. In the sense that it appears the facilities that are of national import, that belong to the state, do not come within their jurisdiction when it comes to them changing names and things. So, you see, apart from the lack of institutional memory, there's also a complete violation of the laws of the land relative to what it was doing. And all this put together was like somebody being in a hurry to, score a political point. You've named a street after him. You've named a school.
We named the street.
Yes, and then named the school. Now you are proceeding to do this. And you see, you ask yourself, what was it that was motivating him? And in any case, who said that could not have a catalytic effect with other local or government authorities moving in the same direction as to then produce an absurdity of a weird character for us to deal with? But so this is the way I see it. It's such a huge blunder, inexcusable blunder, and it's difficult to understand what went into this thinking. So to be honest with you, I'm restraining myself. Do you understand? Because of the moment, the spirit within which we are having the discussion. I think the good old professor will be, even in his grave, this I speak for him, would reject this particular thing. It leads to lack of, you don't inspire people to work for their country. The lady is 91 years old and alive. But you know what affects my whole mindset now? The Ohinijan thing. You see, we have allowed certain trend to develop. And I believe the seeds of impunity were sown earlier. The Accra Sports Stadium, that was renamed Ohinijan Sports Stadium, and then changed again by this same authority. It falls within the same context. The sports stadium is not within the jurisdiction of AMA. But we all sat quiet. Parliament sat quiet. The executive sat quiet. Because I suspect the executive backed it. The whole thing had a certain ethnocentric flavor. The Ghanaians want their properties named after them. Or Accra. We had forgotten who Ohinijan was. He was dead and gone. But we had forgotten who he was, what his contributions were.
There was sufficient discussion on that and the role of Ohinijan on the media, in the media,
yes.
But he didn't want to listen to that.
Yes. Yes, and the executive just turned a blind eye. Parliament turned a blind eye. Apart from sections of the media and some sports groups who spoke, everybody allowed it. So the seeds of impunity were sown then. And so we unleashed an octopus in the form of the AMA boss. And they started running route, naming anything the way they wanted. Sometimes driven by a certain ethnocentric passion. This is Accra. This is our national capital. Many of the things that make Accra what it is don't come from within Accra. Okay, I love the Ghana people. I'll tell you, I consider myself a Ghana. A naturalized one, if you like. I've lived all my life here, except the first 2 years. But that kind of passion that was unleashed in recent times reminded me of Tokyo Joe and Guy Stanford's organization period that Nkrumah confronted over land and other things. So honestly, yes, it's good the president intervened. I've heard others even raising an issue with that intervention as well. But to be honest with you, there had been violation of the law by the AMA.
Nana, how is it possible that the AMA is able to undertake such a project without recourse to the presidency? That's where people say, let's not believe what the presidency is doing. They stepped in immediately to reverse it and summon him to the presidency to answer questions. But some say, look, this is only a political game. You knew about it. It's just because it's backfired big time. That's why you are sacrificing Mr. Van der Poel.
Oh, I won't buy that. I won't buy that. That clearly doesn't wash. I mean, I think that Kwaku has said quite a lot to demonstrate clearly that the gentleman, one, had no business going that way. And then secondly, some emotions, they probably overcome by emotions and took a certain position, But thirdly and more importantly, for me, if I were to be his boss, I would want to go beyond just that decision to find out what must have motivated him to do that. And I think you did it
under a certificate of emergency.
Yes. But what would have pushed him to do that? That is where you can really decide to bring whether a sledgehammer or what do you call it, just whip him and let him off, or bulldozer on him. And in this, I'm very serious.
You're very serious. You want the president to consider asking him?
No. I think that, you see, if he were, for instance, this is a gentleman who a week or two before had, had just gone through the mill and been re-elected. So that decision of his obviously would not have been motivated for, say, a personal desire to be re-elected. If that had pushed him, I would have said, Mr. President, I think that the man must go.
So it will be what? What Kokubaku said?
Yes,
sycophancy?
A combination, if you want to call it sycophancy, emotion, whatever it is, And then Koku also mentioned a slight thing about this centrism and all that. Well, but that's a factor. I'm not comfortable with limiting it to the Ghana for Ghana thing. It's been on. It's on only today. It's been on for some time.
Yeah, but we're talking of Accra now.
Yes, but the truth about it is that our country appears to be going that way, nationwide. Each ethnic group seems to be coming a lot more together than when we were there. I mean, under Jerry Rawlings, we didn't even know what the ethnic thing was. Was it a card that was played, in a certain way? You see, but now an MP is coming, and I can see that problem coming up. An MP or a minister is coming
and appearing before. For those of you watching on TV, that's the woman that you're seeing.
Yes, I know.
At 91.
Yes, I'll come to you in a moment.
Okay, I'm told that the pictures have not yet been put through for you to see, but we are seeing it here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm saying that when you have somebody nominated as a minister or deputy minister or so, and he has to appear before the vetting committee with his whole village chiefs and whatnot and all that. That is is a foreboding that at the end of the day, they expect you to play that card. You are no more, you are out of the hands of the state. You are in there. They are the ones who push you. So that ethnic card, we must consciously work to do without them. But as far as I'm concerned, the old lady, Providence Okoe, I mean, it's not just an ordinary person. You know, so where were the hockey executives themselves when the announcement was made? They should have been the first to say that.
According to Okoe van der Poel, they were part of the consultation process.
Yeah, but
if it's true,
exactly, the AMA itself as a group, you know. So I don't think that it would be fair to say you want to chop off the head of what do you call it, Okoe van der Poel, because he was, as it were, the one who articulated the final decision. But certainly it's worrying. And I think that the presidency did the right thing. In fact, Okoe van der Poel probably should have rolled it back on its own, having regard to the pressure that was brought to bear. You know,
you didn't hear him justify that the pitch itself is in her name, but the stadium is in Professor Mills's name.
Yeah, but the perception is it's unacceptable.
No, but how sustainable is that?
It's
such an absurdity.
Yeah, but Kuku, I think you've spoken for Okoe by saying that he probably acted out of ignorance, and I think that's where it should stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Godwin,
you don't lose your job because of one error.
Here, Professor Emeritus Ivan Adai-Mensah, the former Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, and what he had to say. For him, he thinks that even Madam Okoe deserves more honor than just the naming that project after him. And he says that the present site of the National Hockey Stadium was then a deserted, waterlogged piece of which even the market women near the Tema station were not attracted to encroach upon. It was Auntie Theodosia who approached government to allocate that piece of land to the Hockey Association to be converted into a national hockey pitch. Single-handedly, she started raising funds, first to reclaim the land and eventually to construct the pitch. The construction started just before the 1966 coup, but was abandoned for a short while after the coup. The project was revived later and eventually completed around 1972 or 73. Thanks to the immense assistance Auntie Theodosia got from the then Special Assistant in charge of sports under General Champon, Lieutenant Colonel Simpe Asante, who was himself an ardent hockey player and played for the armed forces. He speaks quite a bit about it and says that it was in recognition of her immense contribution to hockey in Ghana that the late Ohene Jan named her Joan of Arc of Ghana Hockey, because she rose to the occasion to save Ghana hockey when men were faltering and vacillating about the development of the game. And I'm reading this from page 2 of the New Weekend Crusading Guide newspaper. It's an article he did that's been published. And Koku says, how is it that the authority that did the renaming was so ignorant about these facts?
Well, we are all speculating. It may well be that the fact was known. It may well be, but it could also be that it was not known.
The question is, if the facts were known, that must he go? Must he be sacked for having committed such a breach?
Sometimes you also need to appreciate the way things are discussed and decisions taken, where you have groups having to participate in such process. There are normally hawks. I don't know if that expression is appropriate.
The doves.
Fanatics who are normally driven, in the way they see things and do things, not by an objective assessment of issues of merit, but from partisan perspectives. It could be ethnic, it could be some other considerations. And these things are real. And at the end of the day, if you have to put the issue to vote, and depending on the numbers, the Hawks may well have it. These are the dynamics. So if we have to accept...
Is it not about who moots the idea, who brings the people together under a certificate of urgency to do this decision, to take this decision?
If we are to say that it's the assembly that took the decision, the assembly members are elected by their electoral areas, by the general public. So they come in there from various points. I mean, if anybody even brings in the issue and it is not acceptable, I mean, it could be rejected. But that is not to say that what has happened is desirable. It also brings to the fore the way we assess contributions to society and the way we appreciate people who make contributions to society. It cannot be that the contributions made by this old lady were not known, at least by the stakeholders of that particular activity. So that if it came to renaming the place previously named in her name, they would have been consulted. What inputs did they make? Was it a case of they just being informed that this is what we want to do? Or it was a case of they being asked to also make inputs as to what was going to be done? All these things I think we need to know to be able to tell what exactly went wrong. But all in all, I think that it's not proper that you honor a person, you give a medal to the person, and then another time you go to him or her and then say that, please, give it to me, I want to give it to some other person. Even the person you are giving it to, I don't think that you would have done him or her any honor by giving him a second hand, so to speak, award as it were. I mean, if there was the need to name the late president after any facility that is hockey of a nature, we could have put a new one in his name. But I think that the discussions will provide us with some information and knowledge way forward that in matters like this, cool heads should prevail.
Okay. Before Kweku comes in, Kweku wants to make an intervention. Before that, I want to go onto the line. We have Madam Okoe. She's going to be speaking to us from her. She's going to be speaking to us from her home, live on television. Good morning, Madam, and how are you?
I'm fine.
All right. We have heard you speak in the course of this week in defense of your good name and why it should still be at the hockey stadium. Now that you know that the president has ordered a reversal, you certainly feel good about it, don't you?
Very, very good. Yes, about it.
All right. Now, tell me, how did you feel initially when you heard that your name had been taken off the stadium, even though the AMA mayor said that your name remained on the pitch? Hello, can you hear me? I was asking about your first reaction upon hearing the news that your name had been taken away from the stadium.
When I heard it, I said, it's no news to me because such things are very often done in Ghana.
And you felt let down?
I can't hear anything.
All right. How disappointed did you feel? I think I know about that.
How disappointed did you feel? I think I know about that. How disappointed did you feel? I wasn't disappointed because I know the country is growing. So anybody can do something new to replace mine.
All right. But certainly, the last time Joy News spoke to you, you were grateful to the president and expressed the hope to want to give him a kiss for what he had done. Are you still looking for that opportunity?
Very, very much. Because not all people can do that to somebody who is worried.
All right. I think we'll leave it here. Thank you very much for your time. Leave you to relax this weekend. Because in the course of this week, you have done a job, I think, not too many communication directors are able to do. I heard her on almost everywhere. Yes, and she was speaking throughout, and I was like, that's...
That's a sportsman.
All right.
That's what we call him.
All right.
Strong enough.
Okay, so I'm sure that you were done with your point that you were making. Now I come to you, Mr. Okoe, too. What do you know about the law in respect of naming or renaming of monuments, whether they are national or they belong to the local authority?
To be honest with you, as far as I know, local authorities deal with street naming, more of street naming, but with the schools, perhaps because most schools, you know, this second, is it a first cycle and primary schools are managed by them, they felt perhaps they could also go ahead and name the last school that he visited, if that is the school that was named after him, the last school that he visited before his sudden demise. As for monuments, I'm not too sure. I've not checked on the law, but going by what Nana Tudazi has told everybody, there is a body in the castle that deals with such matters. So I believe that he went beyond himself because he had done the stadium one and nobody had raised any eyebrows, if that is the issue.
Is it really the case that no one had raised eyebrows? I remember we speaking to this gentleman, the MP, who presently is defining that as a national asset belonging to the National Sports Stadium, and that it's not within his jurisdiction.
Yeah. Well, clearly, yes. It is not within his jurisdiction. But he did it, and did anybody summon him anywhere? Was there any, quick intervention like what has just happened? I have already said that he owes some personal obligation towards the gentleman because from what I hear, he used to stay with him anytime he visited America when he was there. Okoe Napo is not too old. I think he spent his 50th and birthdays last year or so, where he said he was giving some toilets to some people, if I do recall. So perhaps he might not have known all the history about Madam Okoe, as she said. Further, that because Atta Mills himself was a keen sportsman, hockey player, on his anniversary, he thought perhaps under a certificate of urgency, there was the need for another monument to be named after him.
And that should suggest to you that because it came under a certificate of urgency, that should suggest to you that it was not properly planned. It was not thought through.
Well, on the anniversary of his death, I am seeing the cloth. I saw on television the president wearing something, but I didn't know that it's a 1 year cloth that has been made in celebration of what had happened. So maybe they were involved in this planning. So he knew that, well, the 1 year celebration is on, and there's a need to maybe name another monument after him, like Kweku was saying, so that the show goes on. The next year, too, they will name something after him. But for him, he owes a personal obligation towards the gentleman. But we need to look at, I don't want to look at the ethnocentrism thing too hard, because Oyinija was not a Ga, and they said change it to Accra. So why, if we are looking for Ga names, now we go for Atta Mills? He's also not Ga. So perhaps not necessarily.
But these things are simmer in the background. That why should we? But we had Baba Yara in Kumasi.
Sure.
And he's not from Asante region, So perhaps we may. And I am told that they have these unit committees who also have this responsibility to look at how to name streets, especially in Accra. We have so many funny names, Toicho Street and the rest, as if there are no, prominent guys that you can.
And when they are dealing with the streets, don't they do so in collaboration with the urban roads, because those roads will belong to the urban roads will have supervision over those roads according to the highway laws.
No, they build the roads.
If it's a trunk road, then it comes under the highways.
Yes, but they will build roads. But when it comes to street naming, that is local government business. They take it up, And I do recall one A.A. Amate some time ago. He was on it, and he came to me wanting to find out some of the meaning of some Ghana names. He was himself a very big Ghana guru. He wrote a lot on Ghana history. I wanted to know, Asafuache this, Asafuache that, how do we name some of the streets?
Okay.
So street naming, fine. But beyond that, I don't think that he had that responsibility.
Okay, I'd like us to return to Madam Okoe. She has a message for the country and the president, a very short message. Madam Theodosia Okoe, let's hear what you have to tell the nation and the president.
I would like to thank Ghanaians for listening to me on the air. And I thank also the president for making use of the little knowledge I know to help him to build Ghana. I hope that all the heroes who will come after me will be treated very nicely, because if you do that, everybody, the new ones, the young ones, everybody would like to be called the hero of Ghana. But if you ill-treated them, then nobody would like to be anything like that, because they will say that Ghana is not a place to die for.
Very much indeed. Yes. Nana Tadaji says I should do that on behalf of all the members of the panel on Newsfile. Thank you very much. You just heard Madam Theodosia Okoe. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Kuku wanted to make a quick intervention. We'll take that and go for a quick break.
I made the point about lack of institutional memory. It was premised on the kind of answers that Mr. Van der Poel gave to the questions Kwame asked. It was clear that he was ignorant of the history of this fantastic woman of Ghana. And that's the premise on which I proceeded to make the point I'm making. You realize, and it could be that the records are kept somewhere, but they didn't access. It's still part of the problem. If you look at this document I'm holding here, it's a report of the Committee to Recognize Outstanding Sports Personalities in Ghana. Now, in that same interview, this was a committee set up by Baredu in June 2003. The committee was inaugurated by Joe Agri, who was then the Deputy Minister for Education, Youth and Sports. And indeed, just for history, you had the chairman as Uswansan, and then Kembedi Akum. I'm sure we all know him. Frank Apiaje, Ohineba Charles, Elizabeth Kwame, Randy Abbey, and Kofi Agri. If you go in, they recognize the hockey, people who had made Ghana's hockey what it is, as J.K. Atiemu, K.N. Owusu, Mrs. Theodosia Okoe, and K. Sarah Mason, who, according to them, were dedicated hockey players of high repute who promoted the image of Ghana internationally for the love and also for the love of the game. This record is available. These personalities, I'm sure with the exception of one, I'm not sure, so I don't want to raise Mr. Uswans, I'm not too sure. Yes. He's gone. He's dead. So I just wanted to be sure of myself. But all the rest are alive. Consultations would have helped the assembly. He talks about they consulted the Hockey Association. This is a very tricky area. The woman, Mrs. Okoe, in her interview, one of the interviews, mentioned the name of somebody who is a member of the Hockey Association and thought that that person was part of the damage being done to her reputation. So, well, it could be, as my brother is saying, that the institutional memory was available, but somebody's personal interest may have diverted the others who didn't know from following the right path. You don't build a nation this way. You don't build a nation this way at all.
All right.
No? You know, he didn't even know that the recognition was given to the lady 2004. He said it was Professor Mills who had done that. So there's a lot of ignorance informing this. Bottom line, also ineptitude.
Yes.
That is why some say he should be sacked.
No.
He could remove himself.
Let me go back to this point that quickly that we have institutional lapses, and we must develop our institutions well. As I said, we in the presidential transition law, one of the things that Kwame and myself and others took very strong part in it. One of the propositions we made out there with the establishment of Office of Administrator General. Now, he is to keep record of all these things, you understand? And he will run 4 years. I mean, it's not just a temporary establishment. So that is the kind of body, if you want to pick up institutional information, or memory, we call it a think tank, can pick up them. Now, there is a need for a register of national assets. We don't have it. Even houses. The state doesn't even know the houses it owns all over. Some people are saying convert to, pass it on to their children and all that. So in that law, we said that yes, they must also have a list of that. So they will be having a list of national assets, list of inventory of a register of honors and awards and all those things, and making recommendations persons who have to be recognized.
Thank you. Thank you.
You see, why
that law should
why I understand, I appreciate the fact that there's a standing body of some sort that deals with these national awards and alluded to by Mr. Daisy. If it comes to presidents who we want, former president that we intend to honor, I would still suggest that after the committee has done the groundwork and done a selection or recommendation, it should go to Parliament.
All right.
Why I say so is that you remember that body was there when President Kufuor decided to award certain personalities in this country, including, incidentally, Professor Mills. And you saw the crisis that we went through, to the extent that Professor Mills and others rejected the offer, even though that body sat on those things.
No, the body was moral. It's moral.
So for those of you watching,
I have the document
for those
here.
of you watching on television,
the body sat on it.
Those of you watching on television, President John Mahama arriving at the grounds where the anniversary celebration is continuing, and he would be, cutting the sword, as it were, for the laying of the foundation for the Atta Mills Library. He just arrived at that function. Now, your tweeting experience just got better. It's the best Twitter deal only from MTN. Follow your favorite stars and personalities even when you are not connected to the internet with MTN Twitter SMS. Just send start to 4044 4044 and follow the prompts to sign up. And even better, you get hot updates on MTN Hitmaker, exciting offers, news and information about MTN. Just follow at MTN Ghana. Happy tweeting with MTN Twitter SMS. MTN everywhere you go. Now, before we take this break, I'll bring you some of the messages that you have been sending in. Eric Latte Lakai writes from Germany, is the President John Mahama really in charge of affairs in Ghana? If he is, how can a Metropolitan Chief Executive make such a major decision without consulting him, the president? He should listen to the voice of the masses and give Okoe the sack immediately. Ibrahim Kopa, right from Tamale. It will be very strange for the president to claim ignorance about the changing of the names of state properties to the name of the late president by the AMA boss, when the latter started it even before the late president was laid to rest. Hence, if the president really wants to prove that he is unaware of this national tragedy, then Okoe must be booted out. Yahya Zakaria writes from Spain. Atta Mills was a fine gentleman, and that's why I thought he should have been a pastor and not a politician. We'll talk about that aspect of his political life. Franklin Nyamiche writes from Tamale. The decision of the AMA boss goes in a long way to draw the conclusion that this government has been panicking right from January 29, that it is also time for Parliament to legislate on naming of national monuments after deserving citizens. And a final one from Ernest in Taifa says, Okoe has really deepened the woes of the NDC government. The government is already under pressure to rule the nation, so stop disturbing it further. We'll be right back after this break. All right, you're welcome back. This is Newsfile. You're watching us on your multi-TV Joy News channel, and you're listening on Joy 99.7 FM, Love FM in Kumasi, and over a dozen affiliate stations across the country. My guest, Nana Atodazi, Ayikwe Otu, Godwin Adawine, and Kweku Bako Jr. Now, we want to go to the aspect of look at Professor Mills closely as a politician and finish on the note of calls for full disclosure of what the circumstances are that led to his death, and a discussion about how such should be handled in future. I'll start with you, Mr. Ekotu, on that. And there's some of the text messages that are coming in. For example, this one, yes.
Just a quick one, I'm sorry. This is a rude one. I'm told Dr. Awusu Ansah is alive.
Okay.
He's not, he used to be the sports council something.
Okay.
He's alive.
All right.
So it's a very important correction.
Right. That's a very good one. Okay. This one says, Franklin Kojo says that, I personally think Okoe spoiled the anniversary. Okay, that's not the one I'm looking for. It says, President Mills obviously was a fine personality, but certainly he was not an angel. The problem arises from the odious attempt by the NDC to write everything the man did and all those he did not do. On a parity of reasoning, his positives may weigh his negatives by a lot. I remain of the opinion that it is time that certifies great leaders. It is only posterity, not the NDC, that can prove Mills's leadership competence. So they should end their unnecessary songs that generate calls to vilify the humble soul of Professor Mills. There are those who have also been commenting about his political life and say he was a total failure as a politician. Okay, let me quickly take a quick Koku Anyidoho. He was very, very close to the president. He was his right-hand man, if I can say so. You didn't get to him without going through him. Is that correct, Koku?
Well, good morning.
Yes.
Not necessarily so, no.
All right.
In terms of going through him without getting through to me, no, that's not necessarily so.
Okay.
Close we were, yes, but that was not it.
All right. Now, we want to move on a bit and ask you, we've heard you speak about your relationship with him, praise him about his humility, thanking you for the things you did for him and everybody else, and his commitment to prayer and everything else. But there are calls for full disclosure on what caused his death. Is that a position you subscribe to?
Well, good morning once again. Honestly, when your producer called me, I think we went through the fine details. Respectfully, that's not an issue I'm going to speak to, and that's the position I've taken.
What do you want to speak to me about the president this morning?
Your producer called me and said he wanted us to discuss President Mills and his legacy.
Yes. Koku, we have very little time. What I wanted to ask you is briefly.
If you don't have the time, then there was no point in calling me my brother.
No, I do not intend for the two of us to have any exchanges. I am humbly just asking you what it is that you would want us to look at, and that's very simple.
Well, when your producer called me, he talked about the legacy, and if that is it, I think that we've all,
Okay, Koku, briefly, we want you to tell us how you remember him.
I remember him for his humility, like I've said, time without number. Very humble a person, and a good teacher, and a good mentor. Somebody who really cared about Ghana, and for him it was just work. And I keep telling the story about how every time we traveled and we came back into town and landed at the Kotoka International Airport, if it was not 5 o'clock, everybody had to go back to the office. And his philosophy was that the fact that we've traveled, maybe we've done long hours in the air and we are tired, does not mean that we should go home and go and rest. If the Ghanaian worker is still at work till 5 o'clock, let us all go to work. When it's 5:30, we will close like everybody else. I mean, that was how much he valued the mandate he had and was not going to abuse it. He was very sensitive to the position of trust, that Ghanaians had elevated him to. And for him, at every point in time and everything that he did, he was very conscious of what people will say and what the public will say. He was never going to abuse the trust that Ghanaians had reposed to him. And that's what I remember him for, his strong work ethic and the fact that he was sensitive to the feelings of Ghanaians.
Okay. Now, I know you may not be comfortable about this part, and some people also, but there are those of his critics who say this aspect about his work ethic is partly to blame for what happened to him.
My brother, when my mother passed on 20 years ago, amidst the tears, there was somebody told me something. He said that, Koku, stop crying, all of us, before we came into this world, signed individual contracts with the maker. Now, those who refuse to sign the contract with the maker that they will return one day are not on earth or never came to earth. They remain in that world that you and I don't know about. And so all of us who came or who have come onto this earth from the days of yore signed individual contracts. So I believe that President Mills also signed his contract. His time was up, and the good Lord called him to rest. I'm not going to orbit in certain realms or go into any labyrinthine reasons why he passed on.
Okay, so you disagree with people like President Jerry Rawlings, who says that all he needed was some good advice and some rest, and that could.
I don't disagree with anybody. I hold on to my position.
Okay, now still about his work ethic, there are those of his critics who say that as a politician, you could not say he was the best politician to have because. He ought to be celebrated for his kind-heartedness, for his peaceful, demeanor and everything else. But as a politician, he didn't seem to be in charge and in control.
Well, people will come up with all kinds of things, and of course, we all agree that as human beings. We have our own human frailties, and we are fallible here and there. The only perfect person is the supreme being up there. So people will have all kinds of comments they want to pass about him. I had my own, beliefs about how things should be done. He had his own beliefs as to how things should be done. For me, President Mills just served his country well. He loved his God, he loved his country. He loved his work, and I thank God for the opportunity that he gave me to work with President Mills and serve my country. All the other commentaries people are allowed to have, but for me, I cherish every moment that I had to work with President Mills. He was a good man.
Okay, so before you take leave of us in 30 seconds, how are you remembering him personally within this period?
That he taught me to love my God and to love my country, and I appreciate every moment that I shared with him.
Thank you very much, Koku.
Thank you for the opportunity, my brother. Thank you very much.
Koku Ayidoho, former Director of Communications at the presidency, and he was very close to the president indeed. He doesn't want me to say that you couldn't get through to the president without passing through him. Now, I had asked you that question earlier about his political life, which people, some say, his critics say, you know, he was, Sekou Nkrumah doesn't mince words about it. He says he was weak.
Well, we have different kinds of leadership. We cannot go through all of them, but we have the charismatic ones and we have the transformational ones, you know. I would want to limit myself to these two, and it seems to me that he had neither. He was not a transformational leader, neither was he a charismatic one. But surely he may have his good sides as well, you know. I said generally people looked upon him as a man of peace. I also said I was not in the mainstream politics until he was introduced much later in life. He was a lecturer at the university, and we all knew his passion for teaching and writing books. He rose to become an associate professor. He was, for a long time, outside visiting professorship. Some of us never even met him at the law faculty because he had left, you know, to do his whatever. So when you get into politics, then you see you understand what we call human nature. You know, where people look at your face and tell you, look into your eyes and tell you they are going to vote for you. At the end of the day, they do something else. You know, and they look on you as a Father Christmas who will provide all their needs, you know. So they always come to you with it. You know, then you begin to, you know, then compartmentalize some of them and to see how to deal with them. And then you know when to speak in public and when not to speak. But then you know when the axe will fall. That this gentleman for ABCD, I wouldn't say anything to him in public. But at the appropriate time, I'll deal with him. Now, because in his formative years and when he became a mature person, was more into academic, I am saying that we would not be looking at him as that stiff politician, you know, with all the things that one would associate with people like Kufuor and, you know, Buziers and Nkrumahs and the rest who were in the thick of things right from their student days and all that, you know. So he played his part. I don't know whether you want me to talk about his health, but to me, I think that the NDC also did not handle that aspect well. This so-called work ethics and the rest. When a man is physically not well, everybody sees that he's not well. He came back, he was in his black suit. You look at his profile, everything has changed.
What did you want anybody to do to an adult who is not just an adult, but president?
Oh, remember that you are a leader of a group and you have managers who manage you. So if you find yourself in that kind of situation, sometimes it is not your wish. It may be the wish of your managers as to what you ought to do at a particular time.
But the managers can't force anything on you.
Oh, they do a lot. They do a lot. Maybe
force it on the president?
You've not been there before, but there are times you have to go and take a rest. They tell you, now is your rest time, Mr. President. No way, we are not going to allow you to talk. Said, this one, we are into elections. This is an election year. The months are clipping very fast. There is no way you can give the impression that you are not well. You can't do that. So stand on your feet even when you are dying.
Okay.
You know,
people like the former Deputy Chief of Staff, Alex Segbefia, Professor Ajiman Bedu Akosa, who for some reason says he doesn't want to speak about these matters anymore in public, believe that we should look at a debate that will bring up something to regulate issues of the private lives of the president, especially about their health going forward.
Oh, it's not going to be easy. You know, in America, you need to do medicals, and it is published. We want to know what is wrong with our president. He is the chief of our country, if you like, the chief executive officer. And there it works because you are holding the power to press on a certain button and you can get us into a nuclear war and all that, you know. So they have a strict regime of taking you for training early in the morning, going through your medicals, they publish it and all that. I do not think that we can say that it should be kept privately. No. I believe that what Rawlings did was right. He said that if we knew the man was suffering from cancer and therefore there was a need to manage him well, we would have said so earlier. And then let us, you know, keep it so, you know, keep him in such a way that we would have prolonged his life as well.
No, in saying so, would the opponent not take advantage of and go to the Constitution and say, the Constitution says that if a president, for reason of incapacity or infirmity of mind or whatever, is unable to continue his work, then he ought to, you know, leave the job?
Then you have come back to what I was telling you. There is the managers then who would not permit these things to happen. You understand? It's the manager. I said, we are going for election. Don't tell us we are not well. But you remember, even getting to the end, somebody somewhere said, oh, though Atta Mills will be in charge of the campaign, we will not see him campaigning. I mean, what signals was that sending to us?
Nana, can we
I'm
hear
saying
you?
To land on the matter, that as for the president's health, it can never be a private matter.
All right.
It cannot be.
Now, let's hear you on that. And may I please announce to you at this point that those of you who are seeking to follow us on the internet and are having difficulties, check us on Adom TV Online, and you can follow at that link. Nana, his politics, which has been criticized by some as not being the best. For example, I've heard people like... is it Vitus Azim or Daniel Batidon? You know, these anti-graft campaigners score him very high marks for not being corrupt, but also say that they can't say that his style of governance was good enough to make him a good president.
Well, I would say that everybody is entitled to his opinion, and that is politics for you. If you accept the political leadership, then you are fair game, as it were. For Sekou Nkrumah, I would love to meet him and tell him that he's not fit. He doesn't qualify to assess, what do you call it, President Mills.
Why not?
In terms of, he hasn't been in politics himself, you know, or for long. He doesn't have what it takes to really assess. Of course, he's entitled to his opinion. Look, when his father, President Nkrumah, was kicked out of this country, what went on in this country is unimaginable. The kind of thing they said about the father, the lies, and, you know, just running Kwame Nkrumah down. It was unbelievable. Some said he didn't even have a degree, that it was a fake degree he had. There were others who claimed that he died out of skin cancer, out of this. I mean, what killed Kwame Nkrumah today? You know, it's a myth.
No, but the things you have spoken about do not go to Kwame Nkrumah's charisma and as someone who was in absolute control.
Yeah, I'm saying that in the 1966, I don't know how old you were at the time, but in 1966, what you call charisma and whatnot didn't play a part. He was called a dictator. You understand? That's a different yardstick was being used to measure him. You get me? And the truth about it, the truth about it is that time is a better judge. And that is why, for now, only 1 year after, everyone is entitled to make his opinion that President Mills was weak, he was this, he didn't understand politics, he was not in charge. Well, you're entitled to. I'm saying that time will be the better judge. Of course, he was ill. Of course, he wasn't too well. But who didn't know that before he even became president? Before when he was campaigning, he had to call from South Africa. Have you forgotten that he was not dead? Because the popular thing was that he was already dead. So if he runs 3, 4 or so years later and he dies, so what's the big news really? So the point I'm making is that he had a different character He was a very gentle gentleman. He was a humanist. You understand? His politics was not that violent, you know. So if for some people they contrast it. He wasn't the one who will ram you on the head or yell at you or insult you. So he's too soft. You understand? Have you forgotten how President Kufuor came in? He was almost ruled out on grounds that he was too gentle. So eventually, Koku Bakwe on this money to crown him or create him as a gentle giant. You get me? That he's gentle, but he's a giant. You understand? These are the dynamics, the politics of the day. The reality on the ground that the man's what you call his charisma and whatnot, you know, it's generated by all the events which work out at the time.
Now speak to how they should be treated in respect of their, you know, health.
Yes, as I said, there's a constitutional provision that says that the president's health is at issue. I mean, a board of inquiry can be set up and whatnot. That's just like American thing.
Talking of mental state of health.
Mental.
That is what the Constitution appears to be focusing on.
But I think I buy into Professor Kosa's point that we must have a system for a routine medical inspection of the president and all the other leaders generally. At least once a year we should have it, and that should not be a secret. That one that can be kept in the parliament and whatnot. That is okay, but what killed a president? Look, first of all, the family of the president has a right to that evidence. You know, at death, by custom, you belong to the family. You see, it's different from that of the state. You go understand.
That custom doesn't change when you become president. That custom doesn't change. It's not varied when you become president.
No. When you become president, there's another level that you are treated. It's like the funeral which the family is complaining about. You see, the state is organizing funeral. It doesn't stop the family from organizing their 1 year funeral.
President Kufuor says when you become president, you're a state asset.
Yes, you are. But you don't become, less a family member. In fact, as a chief, you are permitted, your family will hold your funeral as a chief, but then the Sue family can decide that in 10 years later, they have a fit person to succeed you. So that person, is elected or is put on the stool, and then he organizes your funeral 10 years after. But I just want to mention that President Kennedy, up to today, there are calls for investigation into circumstances of his death. That's 1963. It's nothing new. Hitler, all of them. Once you become a leader, there's some mythical something about you. So this call about he didn't die a natural death. He was murdered. He was whatnot. Certified Ghanaian doctors, military doctors at 37 have written out a death certificate, and non-doctors. Non-medical persons are saying that it's not true. I can't understand. We must as a people, we must learn to believe in something, at least in a doctor.
Okay, now, Godwin, your take on his politics and what should be done going forward about the health of a president.
Let me take the last one first. The health of a president is an issue. Because if he becomes physically infirm so as not to be able to carry out the basic functions of his office, he cannot continue to occupy that office.
It's grounds for removal.
Exactly. If he becomes mentally unsound so as not to be able to carry out the duties of his office, he will not continue to be there. So at that point, we can all agree that the health of the president is a public issue. But I think the debate now has to do with the details at a particular point in time. For example, the person is dead. Examination has been conducted on him. The cause of death is known. Should it be automatically made to the public, or the family has a say
So
as to what
do you suggest that we need a law to further elaborate on this particular constitutional provision, or setting policy guidelines for this aspect of the lives of the president, or what? Because people say that leading up to the death of the president, the government and the party didn't want anybody to know about the truth regarding his health.
Yes, and that is so because even if you look at our communities, because we all come from communities, how do we handle the health of our chiefs and elders? It's just the same thing. And we must not also take the position that our traditional practices have all of a sudden lost their importance, even in terms of modern governance. They are competing.
The aspect of the chiefs that you mentioned, initially we may be quiet about it, and traditionally that's what happens. Even when a chief dies, it takes maybe a month or so. But later, we get to know the details, don't we?
Very good. So it then means that we cannot legislate these matters. We have to deal with them as and when they appear at a particular time on the basis of the circumstances.
We have to allow a particular political party or government to lie to us about the state of health of the president, and I'm not saying that's what's happened.
Well, you may call it a lie, but they may call it management, meaning they are managing the situation. You see, so how have we handled this particular issue? Has it destabilized the society? As for the comments and the arguments, they will come. But we are looking at the stability of the society. We have been able to handle it in such a way that the society remains calm, everybody goes about his business, and nothing is disturbed.
But you've forgotten also that it allowed certain unhealthy speculation in town, and that was not good for the image of the country as well.
Legislation cannot prevent such things. We should learn to move on and ignore them and concentrate on the more important issues.
I see.
Now, to the issue of his politics. The late president has been assessed from various angles. From the angle of a teacher, from the angle of a public servant, from the angle of a sports person, and then from the angle of a vice president, and then a president. Now, in all the rest, apart from his position as a president, how has he been assessed? A failure or a successful person?
Success.
Very well. Now, you will also agree that his presidency has been particularly faced with certain challenges. The health, of course, I mean, you may say that some people say that he was not ill, but it's public knowledge that even as at 2008, he was not so well. And that can be said to have had some impact on the speed, if you want to put it that way, and then the effectiveness of some of the things that he did as a president. Don't also forget that he is the person who would want to grant you, or should I say, to give you the benefit of the doubt. That is his way of inspiring you. But of course, it didn't seem that many people who were close to him, or those that he entrusted with certain responsibilities, actually picked the lesson. But of course, and that is how we will look at it and then say that if you are a leader, we expect that the people you select should exhibit the qualities that you as a person exhibit. Now, when people say that he did not succeed as a president, we are looking at his performance in terms of other persons. Maybe Jerry Rawlings, Kufuor, and then let's say Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. But as Nana said, at the time Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was ruling, how was he referred to? And years down the lane, how is he being referred to? And we can recall, during the 8 years of Kufuor's regime, how was he being referred to? So there is always something that you have to measure another thing by. And let's wait for time to roll on. Other people will come after him, and I can assure you that he will become a standard.
All right. Maybe Koko want to start the way he did, the health issue about our president and how they ought to be managed, whether it should be legislated on or there should be some policy guideline about the details and everything. There are those who suggest, for example, that in the very final days of the president, it was very obvious that he was in some sort of trouble, but there was a bit of some posturing by his managers, put him out there. He went to inspect a road, said a few things, and the media was told never use that tape, because what he spoke is not good for the public. He went to Okoe Poe's school, to name it, and all of that, and they were trying to hide some of these things when they knew that it wasn't too good for him.
Yes, as a person, I was one of those who exercised a certain conscientious objection to public discourse on the status of his health. It was a very personal decision, together with some few friends, because of the way and manner it had been handled across the political divide. It had become a subject of political football. It was difficult to do the discussion without hurting some sensibilities and sensitivities. So I actually took that stance. That did not mean that I was against the fact that the health status of a president was a public issue.
Okay.
After all, the expenditure in things on the president are all from the public funds. So I drew a line. But as a person, I took that stand. The only time I commented was when he died. Then I thought it was okay for me to intervene and make my own positions clear. See, this is my Joy Online, 17th June 2012. And this is the story you put out. There was this death rumor surrounding the ex-president. He says, and this is him. He says, indeed, this is not the first time I've heard people say this about me. Let me say that I am very, very, very strong. And I don't know the basis for saying that I am dead. Well, let me say that under our constitution, the president has a duty to inform Parliament, to inform them whenever he's going outside the country. What I have decided to do is to go for a medical checkup. And this will not be the first time I go there and they make sure everything is okay. So I'm going for a few days and then come back. This is 17th June. He himself was taking part in the management of that thing that my brother alluded to.
I alluded to.
Yes. Then you had, this is Peace FM Online, 24th June, exactly 1 month to the day of the demise. And it's a story, I'll quote some 2 paragraphs. A matter concerning the president's health was a prime subject. This is in the Sankofa radio based in Stuttgart, Germany. In reaction to this, Honorable Ablakwa, in a relaxed voice, described that the president is fit, sound, and kicking. I spoke with him this morning and he was responding well. Hopefully, he arrives in Accra on Monday, 25th of June, as expected. This is not the first time that Professor Mills has been rumored to be sick, dead, or incompetent. But still, our president keeps growing strong and performing. That's part of the management. It wasn't the reality. Everybody could see it, that it wasn't the reality. But the managers decided that the real truth should not be told to the public. But it was taking its toll. You recall, there were certain incidents, some violent clashes, and other areas, and there was some silence. It had to take the vice president to be an activist, play an activist role, and people kept on raising those issues. It's a very difficult thing, to deal with, but I think the experience that we've had with the late president's situation makes me convinced that there is the need for us not to treat the health status of a president as a taboo subject. I'm convinced about that. We ought not to do so. There are certain things that you may not disclose. Look, for instance, and it's not exactly health status. When the Kulungugu bomb occurred, Nkrumah was hurt.
Oh yes, they escaped.
But the official press release said he escaped unhurt. Of course, back later, those things were part of the reasons why he died.
That killed him. Sekou
come
says that
in.
his father died of prostate cancer. You understand?
Yeah.
But like you were saying, we all do know that skin cancer
Yeah.
was a major factor.
Yeah, it was.
But last week,
I haven't heard him say so.
Okay, so
but you see, the point I'm making that
there
are certain instances where, for some security reasons, in Nkrumah case, because there had been a bomb through, political stability, security concerns, they decided to hide the fact that he was injured, was treated, and he got eventually well. But that eventually affected. So there are circumstances, but not when there's a protracted concern about the health status of a president, and you can see the deterioration progressively.
Yeah. So, question: should it be left to discretion of those managing the president or the president, or we should have?
But I think we should have a medical facility that goes with the presidency. We do. But whether it is comprehensive or not is another matter. Even the level of professionalism of the personnel, the level of equipment in terms of its sophistication, all these things are important. And then, of course, when it gets to a stage that you realize that the person can no longer, and I'm not talking here of the late president, I'm doing a general discussion, can no longer hold on to the office, we should go through the appropriate constitutional mechanisms and get a person to exit. One, for his own safety, security, and longevity, as well as the state's own quality of governance relative to the state's interest.
So the constitutional injunction is part of the reason why a government or a party would not advertise the infirmity or incapacity of a president.
Thing is more of mental thing than physical health.
Unless
the physical is so serious.
It's both.
No, but I'm saying that it is more. Unless the physique goes down, then that's obvious to anybody.
Right.
You understand? But the Professor
Okoe
thing, because you recall on this very program, we made that point. We made that point on this very program last year, that the circumstances surrounding when the whole process began at the castle, how he got to the airport. You can come in, how he got to the 37 military hospital. Those areas, I am fully for. We made that statement here. We supported that call. And it's been reinforced by Professor Akosa. Now we can read.
Sorry, but because of time, I just want you to quickly go to his politics and deal with that in 2 minutes for me.
You see,
summary.
I am, because he was a friend, I tend to be a bit charitable. I think it's too early for me to make a very comprehensive judgment of his politics. To be honest with you, too many problems occurred under his watch, which raises issues. You know, the way and manner this judgment death was handled, people would think it's a very small point. But if you have a situation where a report issued by Yoko, which appears to be even under serious threat by the court proceedings, is that he gave instructions for something not to be done, and yet it was done. And when it was done, those who did what they did were not touched. I'm not looking at judgment death per judgment, I'm looking at exercising authority, having the leadership authority to control the trend, to control and command. I think something went wrong there, you know. He wasn't a robust type of politician. But if you were asking me to rate in terms of Ghana's leadership, I would rate Nkrumah first, I rate Kufuor second. You know, I put Professor Mills as a president in the context of Liman and Busia, who didn't finish their term, and it's difficult to rate them. Of course, he had 4 years as a vice president, but that's not president. So it's difficult. History, maybe we should wait a while and let history judge him appropriately.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Nana is open to Article 69.
Yeah.
You want to read it quickly for our public, and then we'll go for a break and come back.
Just to clarify that the removal of president in two categories. One where he cited, to be removed. And the second situation is where he himself resigns. And in 69, 1C, he will be asked to be removed if C, when he's found to be incapable of performing the functions of his office by reason of infirmity of body or mind. And then in 69 2 B, where he himself writes to say that the conduct or the fiscal or mental capacity of the president be investigated on the grounds of, what the way himself does.
Right. So the fiscal is
yes. So the fiscal, but that can be triggered by Parliament.
Yeah,
Parliament
to the physical.
Sure.
Yes.
I concede. I was
but
wrong.
let me, add this, that where elsewhere these managements may be acceptable to the public, then at the end of it all, somebody writes his memoirs. There he publishes everything that actually took place. We don't have it here.
All right.
And that is the more reason why this is somebody who had a long time as chief of staff. He's not published anything.
Okay. and that reminds me, almost on a daily basis when we sit on Newsfile, I get people asking about Kwaku Baako and what he's promised to put out in the public by way of a book. And they keep saying he should be reminded to do it quick.
Are they expecting me?
No.
To exit so slowly.
All right. They think you are managing your life.
Say it again. All right. So for those of you, once again, for those of you who want to follow us online, you can log on to the Adum online. You can get the live feed there as well. Those of you in London who are also watching us on ABN, you're also welcome. And your text messages are still welcome, 1422. We'll take a quick break here and return to continue with the next two issues that we can try to discuss. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM. And there's this texter who says that it is surprising that even upon the reversal, you still go to the GhanaHockey.org and you find that the reversal has not reflected. Interesting.
Apparently, the Okoe journeyman, Madam Okoe mentioned, is the chairman of the Hockey Association.
Right.
And I'm told immediately after President Mills had died, he actually announced the change of the name into Professor Mills.
That's why she mentioned him, because he has some issues
that is the point.
with him as well. Okay. All right. Maybe the president, since she's looking for the president, maybe the president will visit her one of these days and she would directly communicate her frustrations to the president. Now, Supreme Court, the Supreme verdict is expected if there are barring any unforeseen changes to the situation or the dictates of law by the 15th of August. People are talking about the incessant calls for peace after the declaration of the verdict and saying that could backfire if not properly contained or done in a certain way. Kuku, I don't know what you think about that.
Well, some weird logic. I cannot appreciate that point. And I think I read somewhere that the Deputy Minister of Education had said so. But subsequently, a day or two later, I heard a president full of praise for the Peace Council for the initiative they had taken. So I said, well, here was a situation where the boss and the subordinate had divergent views. What do we lose? If organized society, civil society, traditional authorities, state institutions, the political leadership, and I think we agreed to this here last week, all in a very focused manner, appeal to our senses and ask us to lower our emotions and be law-abiding and accept the verdict of a Supreme Court. What do we lose? Okay? So really, I don't see why we should even have a controversy over this. It's needless.
Okay. And the comments about this should be brief. And secondly, there are those who have gone ahead to write some publications making permutations about what should be expected, and those who are also giving a history of the political leanings or orientations they know about the judges. Some say this is not healthy.
I think it was Patrick Smith in Africa Confidential or so who did that analysis. He's very well known. He knows Ghana quite very well. He knows the Ghanaian political chemistry and things. And I read the thing. I've seen it posted on various websites as well as on Facebook and things. you know, in the US and elsewhere, it's no big deal. They know the political leanings of
the judges,
especially the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
It's after all, more or less, also a political court.
Yeah.
You know, so they do that. I'm not too sure. It's not a very current thing in Ghana. It's a bit unusual within our political chemistry.
Okay.
And because of the level of political sophistication and consciousness, it could be a minefield to walk in. You know, so perhaps I wouldn't take that and republish for good reasons.
Okay.
I will exercise some effective gatekeeping in that respect. But otherwise, they are human beings. Don't they vote? They vote. They have political inclinations. But the fact that President A appointed Judge B does not necessarily make that judge pro that president or his party or government. So it's a very tricky area, and one should be careful handling that kind of situation.
Nana, what do you say to those who say that kind of analysis is dangerous, so that you poison the minds of the people?
Well, I think two things. First of all, I don't believe that this kind of writing is going to change the mind of any judge anyway, one way or the other. Then secondly, like Okoe Riley said, I mean, as for the political leanings or the history, not the leaning, history of judges, we live with them. So we know where they were standing at various times in the past. But I think he really hit the nail on the head when he said what Professor Kluje had said. I mean, we were on the same platform. I had read a paper, he had also read the paper the same day that at IA platform. That, you know, as for judges, you don't, you should be aware of them. I mean, you don't assume that because you've appointed them, that necessarily they will vote for you. Indeed, the history has shown that it's in the reverse. Yeah. And NDC government, we were shocked, surprised by some of the decisions. For somebody like Mr. Justice Akins, who's dead. I mean, he was the one, he was with us throughout, and he was the one who barred, the celebration of 31st December. You remember? Yeah. And that was a big, you know, exciting lesson for all of us. I mean, and so you don't necessarily follow up. But with the issue of peace, I think that there's the need for more peace the call for more peace than less, because it's a challenging period. We want to sensitize our people. I don't think we've even gone that far. It must be a household talk. You know, if Professor Mills talked about peace, as my brother said, for 3 years and ended up winning, it tells you that there's a feeling, there's a belief in our people that we want a peaceful society. Let's sensitize and give reasons why we need more peace. One, that this is about election. Secondly, that this election, they will come another 4 years' time. There's also service in standing and waiting, you know, for your term. So why do you raise all of us up and then kick all of us out of the country or create violence only because you must necessarily be the president or not the other person? You can also wait. Okay. So I think there's more need for more peace, and the civil society is doing a fantastic job. They need to deepen it. All of us must do it.
And Mr. Okoe, like Nana says, is it really the case that it doesn't matter at all who appointed who and what political orientation we know about any of the judges?
Well, in the first place, this is contempt of court to do that kind of thing. I mean, you are interfering with the administration. You are interfering with the administration of justice, and I don't think it's fair. Secondly...
No, but in the American system, before you even go to the Supreme Court, you would have people who might brief you properly, if you are not familiar with it, about the particular political orientation of each judge. So you go and address them with that at the back of your mind.
No, you need to study the voting pattern of a particular judge to come to a conclusion that this man is a Republican.
Okay.
You know, because they will not necessarily tell you, you know. But I would like us to look at the judicial oaths. I, so and so, having been appointed so and so Justice of the Supreme Court, blah, 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 do in the name of the Almighty God, or solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Republic of Ghana as by law established, that I will uphold the sovereignty and integrity of the Republic of Ghana, and that I will truly and faithfully perform the functions of my office without fear or favor, affection or ill will, and that I will at all times uphold, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the Republic of Ghana. These words of being truly and faithfully perform the functions of the office without fear or favor, affection, or ill will must weigh on the minds of the judges. Secondly, for laymen, they don't realize that judges just don't go and vote, but they listen to the evidence.
Okay.
So that is why, for example, I am not surprised at what maybe Justice Akins might have written, because the force, the sheer force of the evidence and the legal submissions that may be brought to bear on him would, at the end of the day, let him, buckle down. That look, I may look stupid, to use that word, if I may vote against this thing, because the evidence is there. The law is not on the side of the party I even support. So once people are made to understand that judges don't give judgments in vacuum, but they listen to the evidence. If the evidence is there that overvoting is overvoting and it ought to be annulled, for example, I don't see how. I don't see how anybody will say that. As for me, I am NDC. As for me, I'm NDC, so I will accept it. I'm using that as an example to show you that when the evidence is there and the law is there, you are bound to follow it. And that is what we do. And the last point is Trayvon Martin in America.
All right.
I mean, people watch. I constantly watch every evening when I came back, the analysis and all that. I kept on telling people in Ghana that those discussions going on there, those jurors never listen to them. They are under what we call jury sequestration. So they had no idea of what was being, spoken about.
Yeah.
In fact, as at yesterday's analysis, one of the jurors who is now confessing, I said that if she had heard some of these things, perhaps it would have made a difference to her, but she didn't know, the racial aspects and all that. They thought it was just an ordinary stand your ground business and that was it, But now you go deep and you ask yourself, why should somebody follow a black boy? Just because he's a black boy and he's hooded, so you follow him. The weather is bad, you can always hood and things like that. So why do you follow? And at the end of the day, go and kill this young unarmed man and all that. It becomes problematic. Look at what happened in America. Almost all the states went, demonstrating. So we cannot measure, we cannot predict what will happen, depending upon the reasons that the judges will give in arriving at their conclusions. Those ones are open to the public. Once they listen and said, no, this one we don't agree, when the evidence was there, plain like, water, that everybody should say that it's a clear water, clear treated water. So how come that you got to this conclusion? So as for me, I don't know, a call for, peace, fine. But at the end of the day, what will be the judgment and what will be the reasons in support of that judgment? That is what will lead to whether we're going to have Trayvon Martin or not.
Are you saying that the people who have followed the process have the capacity to understand what will be the legal analysis that should go to the outcome?
No, the judgments. You see, at the end of the day, you're going to have a judgment. And
the judgment is based on the analysis of the facts as put to the test of the law.
Yes,
which the people who listen, most of them, do not have the capacity to do.
Well, they may understand it at the end of the day. That, look, we had various categories. Now, these categories, all we needed is whether we had sufficient evidence to support those categories. And that in some of the analysis, assuming it was split decision, some of the analysis, it became clear that these things happen. So, as for you, were you looking at the evidence with jaundiced eyes? Did you have a problem with the evidence that you came to a different conclusion? I'm saying that don't take them because they are laymen, that they cannot even appreciate it. And then they would.
Let me hear you.
I feel a little uncomfortable with my brother's focus. You see, I don't think that ours is to see the people understanding the judgment.
Okay.
Because that would be difficult. It's a tall order because there are so many rules and regulations coming. But we should be lifting the peace talk into the institution, into the fact that judges have a mandate under our constitution. They have the mandate to decide what the law is, what the case should be. So we all say that, well, we throw our, our fate into their, their hands. What they decide.
The maximum is that they will do justice whether the heavens come down.
Well, whatever, yes. So, but I'm saying that once we know that they are the ones to decide, they make a decision, one way or the other, we will accept. That is where the peace things. But to say, I've heard people say that, once they've done justice in this or the thing, a qualified thing that if a judgment doesn't go, the judgment go in a certain way, it means that it is not just, and for that matter must not be respected. I have a problem with that. I think that all of us as stakeholders must rise above and then go beyond and get to the level of the Constitution. What is the mandate of the Supreme Court?
Okay.
And what is the level of respect?
Let I go to finish his point.
The only point I make is this. In America, where even the level of education could be said to be higher, we've had these problems. You know the case of a black man who was molested, and after, at the end of the day, he was acquitted and discharged. There was so much hue and cry that the president had to come in and say, look, let the federal take it over. And they went ahead and now got a conviction. That is Clinton's time, just to stem the tide of what was happening in America. I am saying that at the end of the day, the people of Ghana will also look at the evidence and the reasons that. And I would not. But I would never.
Okay. As this debate goes on about seeing the evidence clear, maybe seeing the advocacy of some of the lawyers and everything, it takes my mind to the courtroom where I feel very comfortable and encouraged because I see a judge nodding at my advocacy and I do it so strongly. And in the end, my clients are excited. Then we go for judgment and,
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
And that is where the education, and I'm talking about the public education, is much more needed. For lawyers, these things are normal.
All right.
Exactly.
For them, it may not be so. And it is the reason why we should educate them to understand that the judges may well have their political and other preferences, but they are trained professionals who, like my senior has said, have taken an oath. And don't forget, they are experienced judges. And I stand to be corrected, the senior most judges in the country. So they are not motivated by the kind of youthful exuberance that some of us may have. But they are principled individuals who recognize that it is not at this stage of their lives and professional careers that they can afford to be reckless with whatever they are doing. So, of course, we may disagree with the reasoning and then the conclusion, but we have a duty to accept the decisions that they come to.
That's where some say we actually do not have an option.
Of course.
We have the option of a review before the finality.
That is so. The option is only the judicial option.
But not to say that we don't, accept it. We disagree.
Exactly.
And the disagreement is okay, then move to the next stage.
All right.
Now, talking about the legal analysis, based upon their political orientation and all of that, I thought they would rather have been looking at their judgments over the years.
All right.
Because, we are looking at their function now as judges. How have they performed all this while? That is what we can use, as a rational basis for any projections. And these are judges who have handled similar situations, though not in a politically charged situation like this.
Not exactly similar, really.
Well, they have issues of voting have come about.
That is correct.
And they have had to reason in a certain way. Human rights issues have come about. They have had to reason a certain... and these things intertwine. So you can look at the kind of principles they apply, the reasoning methods they use.
An attempt to anticipate.
Exactly. But to say that a person some years ago was once a parliamentary candidate here or once this, and therefore his life, I think that is not informative.
But that has been done more by the politicians. It's the same politicians.
And it's obviously for a certain purpose.
Yes, who have actually bastardized most of these judges.
And then they turn around and say we should preach peace to the people.
So it's the onus is on them to lead the peace campaign.
It's important if each of the 9 justices should come out with his own opinion. You see, write what it is. Don't go, agreeing, concurring with anybody.
Okay.
I mean, this is the way you saw
Let's take that. Use that to educate us how they go about coming out with their judgments.
Okay.
How would they do it? 9 of them.
There is something we call conference before judgment. So they all will go and sit down and look at the issues, and then they vote. Along lines. What do you think about this? I'm for this. I'm not for that. I'm for this. I'll give a judgment on this and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, there is a certain consensus that though this will be the final judgment of the court, but then we are going to have a split decision. So the president comes out and announces that we have a split decision of 5-4. And I'll call on my brother on my right to start reading the dissenting opinion. Then he starts, and after the dissenters had finished, they come to maybe the majority, those who have heard whatever it is, and they also read, and then the president will say, this is the judgment of the court. Now he gives his final ruling, looking at all of them, whatever they have said.
Then they also read. So you're saying that before the conference, they would have written opinions?
Of course. Everybody now has an opinion. And it's very dangerous when you don't go in for a pre-judgment conference, because then you don't know what is going to happen. And we have a situation where I was told that one Chief Justice was shocked when he thought he had the support of the rest, only to come and find that they were going to vote against him. And he lost, rather miserably. So where there is and it calls for some kind of commandeering, some feeling of oneness, that they can come and sit down. Look, I took my individual oaths. You also took your individual oaths.
That is so.
So I'm going to vote for this. You, if you want to vote for this, if you like, convince me why I should be on your side. Well, sometimes they have what we call 2 lead judgments.
Yes.
This one is writing for those who are voting, and this one is writing for those who are against, and those who are upholding, and those against. So you read that, you will write the main judgment, I'll give a supporting to you. You also write, I'll give a supporting. There are times that everybody writes equally.
Yep.
Everybody wants to write equally, and I believe that this is what should happen in this case.
Okay.
Because you see, there are seniors there and there are juniors. In terms of seniority, it is not because one was called to the bar earlier than the other, no. But one became a Supreme Court judge before other became Supreme Court judges. So in terms of seniority, and then maybe out of love and for somebody say, oh, as for this one, I don't want to disagree with him. When he has said this, I want to follow up with him. But for this special matter in which we find ourselves, I believe that it will be better if all of them will write their individual opinions.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I'm looking through the messages that you have posted on my wall, but I find that almost 99.9% about the late president, and particularly about Okoe Vanderpoel. And okay. So let me read just 1 or 2 in my hand here. This is Hudu Al Hassan, and he doesn't identify. Okay, he's sending this from UK. He says, please let all of us use the anniversary to ask the Lord's forgiveness for the wrongs the former president might have done secretly, as he was a human who was liable for mistakes, because his good deeds were already known by the Lord, and what his soul needs now is the Lord's forgiveness in his grave, than treating him like he was a faultless being by trying to be naming everything in Ghana after him. And there are those who just want to make fun talking about breaking news coming in from the UK, and they are saying that the prince, the royal baby, was named hurriedly to prevent the mayor from
invading their
Okay, interesting messages here. Now, we'll take a very final break quickly and then we'll return. Okay, all right, I've got the license for us to continue without any further break. Now, you need to get all new stylish Hawaii Ascent Y210 Android phone and get your money back in talk time and internet data over 12 months. For only 169 Ghana cedis, you get your sleek Hawaii Ascent Y210 and enjoy exciting freebies for a whole year. Now, it comes with exciting entertainment and gaming experience, internet access, 2-megapixel camera, plus other amazing features. It's the MTN Deals Papa. Visit the any MTN outlet for yours today. Offer valid until while stocks last. So go on, grab your MTN Deals Papa now and ascend to a whole new mobile experience. MTN everywhere you go. And as you know also, this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. Also, Lipton Tea, inspiration flowing naturally. And for those of you who are commenting about my shirts and you seeing the sleeve that has all right, okay, so that is brought to you by Latida. Don't be left out. Be on top of fashion world with the latest in Latida. Men's and ladies' designs in African print and linen dresses. Looking good and sharp is what they pride themselves in. Their 2013 designs of men's shirts and ladies' dresses in African print are out and selling fast. So be in vogue. Don't be left out in the latest men's and ladies' outfits. It's affordable, and that is their hallmark. Just call 026 5650918 or 020 433 6444. Thank you very much. Now, we move quickly to a very final issue that we want to look at. And if we have time, we would move on to take a few comments about JIDA. Now, tell me, Ms. Aiko, too, the alleged arsonists eventually have had bail granted them because the court cannot continue to wait on the prosecution to go fishing for evidence to come and start the trial.
We sat here, myself and Kweku Baku, to say that we do not think that there is evidence out there and that this thing is not the best way to go about it. You know, if you have brought in investigators who are doing the investigations, allow them to do some investigation. But before we could say, Jack, say, oh, we have already got a few of them. Where did you get these people from? Who is in charge of this investigation? We said it, that it was going to collapse. I said it, he agreed with me. At the end of the day, that's it. It's collapsed. You know, so we have, I think I would like to say this without necessarily trying to worry my friend on my right, that the propaganda that sometimes we talk about, you know, that when you have too much of propaganda in almost everything you do, you may end up putting yourself into some kind of difficulty. And at the end of the day, they will embarrass you. If our people are very discerning and they don't wait for some of the last minute things that are happening before elections, you know, the way these propagandas and unprecedented things happen, I'm telling you, would not, you know, augur well for my friend's party. You know, but seriously, this is a huge embarrassment. And we kept on warning them that it will happen. And there it is. They had no evidence. They wanted to create the impression that they've done some work. You take the people there and say, we are doing investigations. You know you have only 48 hours. They keep on giving you time. Now the judges say, look, please go home. When they are ready, they can come. So it's true to our prediction. That is all I'll say.
Nana?
I thought who was going to.
No. You have
I have absolutely nothing to add to what has been said.
Nana, you have
nothing more to
We'll
add.
take you at your word. Well, I think that my friend kept drawing attention to his friend and immediate right. That's me. And maybe I want to just pass it back. My friend is immediate left. Because he has been an lieutenant general before. And he knows the challenges which face that office. He knows that going to trial within 48 hours, the constitutional, mandate, is one of the biggest challenges facing the prosecutors and whatnot. You know, if you have to go arrest the person and then bring him to court within 48 hours, how much, investigation would you have done? You know, it's not the lawyer who takes the case to court who must produce the evidence. He relies on investigators. He relies on the police. He relies on detectives who have to do a job like that. Particularly when it's let me put it, a hit and run kind of situation. It's always very difficult. It's a kind of guerrilla thing where somebody runs from this, goes here and whatnot. That is assuming they are arsonists. You know, it's going to be difficult. Was it yesterday? I was just checking my net. Yesterday or 2 days ago, I read where the IGP boldly says that they are on the heels of more arsonists. That gave me. I'm looking forward to see him translate that into action. You know, but of course he cannot come and tell you that they are there.
But we are aware of the Tema situation, right?
Yes. Well, it doesn't matter. We're going to pick some, drop some. But I'm saying that.
Why was that a pathetic story? Because that was
the one you're talking about.
Yes.
The place was burning. The candles were intact.
Do you know the history of Jack Fox? You know, Guy Fox, sorry.
The candles were intact.
Guy
the
Fox
candles that were
of
used to start the fire were intact. And the fire was on.
You know,
that's a pathetic story.
So some of these things, I think that we must sympathize with the security agencies. They are faced with a very difficult assignment, and we must have an answer to it. Maybe the arsonists may not be the only ones with a finger in this. You get me? There are other factors. But
on that note, I find that the very latest fire also at the Circle, you would. I was watching on TV, and those whose stores or wares had been burnt, they had cordoned off the place and they were not giving them access to the place. I thought that was to protect evidence. But they were crying and shouting that they should be allowed to get in there. They make the work of the prosecutors difficult, don't they?
Well, that may be so from the prosecutors, or let's say the investigators' point of view. But you also have to understand the traders too.
If they can't preserve the evidence, they are in trouble when they go to court.
For them, what does preservation of evidence mean? To them, it is their wares and their property that is there. So they have to be assured that what they are seeking to enter there to do will be done on their behalf, and that there is even a greater need to preserve whatever evidence that may be needed to analyze the course of the event. So the public needs education if we have to get them to cooperate with these specialized institutions. Okay. But you see, in all of this, there are two things that we need to bear in mind. In a criminal matter, you have to prove your case beyond reasonable doubt. That is a tall order. Then the law says that everybody is innocent until he's proven guilty. So this practice normally of investigations still ongoing, and people are being paraded as criminals, thereby inciting the public against them. I think we have to learn to stop that, because the investigators know the difficulties that they go to gather the facts. And the prosecutors also know the difficulties that they go through in analyzing the facts and fitting them to the appropriate charges. This cannot be done within 48 hours if any serious matter is to be analyzed and to secure a conviction beyond reasonable doubt. So we need to let the public know so that the anxiety can sometimes be lessened.
Okay.
Sam, a president has spoken of arson. Ministers of states have spoken of arson. Ruling party communicators have spoken of arson. I assume that all this was driven by a certain intelligence gathering and estimation. Targets mainly marketplaces, public marketplaces. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt for a moment. I don't believe it. I side with what Honorable Okoe has said, 100%. But I'm just trying this.
Well, he has another battle to face because one of his clients, who was he secured the discharge and acquittal for. There's some appeal. Canadian Japan is going on again. So
is this what are the preemptive measures that have been put in place? Markets are targeted according to your arson theory. So there's intelligence backing it. Then these markets keep burning. Yes. Do you understand? There must be something wrong. If indeed this whole arson thing is based on concrete intelligence coming from state security, I would have expected by now that those targeted areas, because the intelligence will estimate that these are targets. So there's something wrong with everything we are doing in this country.
Okay, and I need to let you know that there is the adolescent sex education going on right now at the Holiday Inn, so you can go and be part of it. It's under the auspices of the Ghana Education Service and the Adolescent Sex Education Program and the Wish Foundation. So parents and everybody else, you are community health workers, you're all invited to the show. It's on sex education, rape, abuse, sexually transmitted infections. I'm talking about right now today at the Holiday Inn. So go there and be part of this program. On these notes, I want to say that thank you very much for your company. On Newsfile, my guest have been Abdul Malik Wekubaku Jr., Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Godwin Adawine is a law lecturer and a practitioner. Nana Atodazi, former Chief of Staff and a member of the NDC legal team, currently dealing with the petition at the Supreme Court. Ni Ayikwe Otu, former Attorney General, and he's also in practice, but not on the petition right now in the Supreme Court. I am Samson Ladi Ayenene. This show was produced through the leadership of Sedem Ofori. It will be repeated at 9:30 on this particular platform on your multi-TV Joy News channel. So tune in again if you missed it. Good afternoon.
Close-up deep action. We created it to give the world 3 times fresher breath and eliminate up to 99% of germs. Maybe we went too far. There's an outbreak of freshness. Now the best ever from Close-up. 3 times fresh.